What happens when two very sharp Dynasty players meet with an adequately above average Dynasty player and try to put their heads together and draft the perfect team using three individual Dynasty fantasy football strategies? The answer is I have no clue. But tonight, we're going to find out. But let's try to get a quick version of what your initial draft strategy is. I'm going to get the same thing from Ryan. I'll give a little, and then we'll decide what spot we want to draft from.
Number one, you look at the league settings. This is legitimately the most underrated draft strategy in Dynasty. If people don't pay attention to the scoring settings, then they just go in with whatever their baseline mindset of what they want to do. So that's number one. You go check. What's the tight end premium? How many roster spots are there? Are there funky first down settings? Anything like that that makes you change what your normal approach would be? And then if there are, you think about what would be the ways that this would really shift from a normal league where I think there might be inefficiencies if people just draft not according to those settings. Second, I look around, I see who's in my league, right? Maybe you don't know anybody. If you do know some people, you might get a decent idea of whether you think there's going to be people that are going to be more productive struggle oriented, more win now oriented, whether they're going to be a bunch of zero RB bros, whether they're not. That's going to be one thing that you want to try and tailor. And then really the first probably 2 to 3 rounds, I try to just draft, really just based on value. I don't try to think about win now. I don't try to think about win later. I just, any pick, I'm open to trading up. I'm open to trading down. I want to be in conversations and I want to see what the draft leaves me. And then once those first few picks are there, it's a little bit less about my team and it's a little bit more about surveying the draft economy of, is this a super quarterback heavy run, that we need to worry about? Is this a draft where everybody's trying to get future picks? Everybody's trying to move future picks. And then the rest of the draft is just about trying to, if I'm trying to compete in, the way that sort of works within this draft economy and presses whatever edges I can. And otherwise, just trying to swerve against the grain as much as I can, where kind of whatever the draft is willing to leave me, that's what I'm willing to take.
No, I think that's all pretty dang smart. Ryan, how do you approach a draft room where you know absolutely nobody?
Yeah, Jacob pretty much covered all the kind of 5,000 foot level overview stuff. Agree with all of that. I would say going into a draft, especially if I don't know anybody, as Jacob said, yes, not trying to do anything crazy within the first 2 or 3 rounds. I'm just observing, trying to observe the behavior, see kind of what everyone else is doing and react accordingly later on in the draft. If I go in with any like rule of thumb, quote unquote, before the draft starts in a Superflex format, it is usually I would like to get a quarterback within the first 3 rounds, preferably within the first 2 rounds, just because, yes, theoretically, you can play all these games and patch together production at the position depending on the build you're trying to do. But my least favorite thing to do in Dynasty is go out and try to trade for a quarterback after the startup. It is such a pain. Nobody wants to send you their quarterback unless you're sending them one back. And usually if you're trying to upgrade, you're going to be overpaying on value there. So I just like to get it over with, get at least my one elite anchor quarterback just in the startup draft. So I don't have to worry about it. And that really goes doubly if I don't know anyone in the league. I don't know how active it's going to be. I'm really trying to make sure I cover that base first and foremost so that I'm not having an awful time getting my team off the ground whenever I decide that needs to happen.
I love that. I think it opens you up to some really good options. I'll say for myself, I am not overcommitting to the second QB. If I am at a position in a draft where, especially in a room I don't know, I am heavily trusting what ADP, and for reference, today's ADP and where I'm drafting all non-user teams will come straight from Dynasty Data Lab because I do not trust sleeper ADP. I've said this quite a bit. I'm going to trust in that and then get a feel very quickly in the first 2 rounds where we're sitting. Do I know I'm willing, if I'm in a situation to draft Kyler well ahead of what his ADP is, to ensure that I get him if I don't know the room? Okay with him being my QB1 and absolutely punting the position if it is a strong run. I go into drafts completely expecting long runs at awkward times. And what that is I'm automatically going into a draft assuming the worst, that there is going to be an abundance of wide receivers going way before I want them to, so I won't get a chance to have them, and a bunch of quarterbacks going way earlier than I want to have to draft them. What this does is it allows me to, in my head, plan ahead for the pivot and then figure out how I'm going to get around the pivot should it need to happen. That way, when you're at home or you're at work and it's an 8 to 10 hour clock and you haven't checked the draft in 4 hours and you look and you go, oh no, my entire queue is gone. Panic mode. Gonna draft the lowest tiered nesting doll wide receiver around ahead of ADP. And then you're kicking yourself 2 rounds later, and everyone has posted a sign on your forehead that says, kick me. You don't want to be that guy in that situation. So that's what I do first and foremost. I would say the second thing is get to know your draft room immediately. Immediately start sending DMs to everybody. Ask them what's up. Ask them what they think they're going to do. Let them know that you're willing to deal. The one thing I'll also note, because we're not going to be able to do it, is trading down at every pick is optimal. But now everyone knows that trading down is optimal, and it's become a lot harder. I'm not going to be like, well, ideally, I'd like to trade down here, because obviously we want to trade down here most of the time. We're not going to get to do that. So I'm just going to get that out of the way.
I used to be like a trade down guy. Now I would consider myself just a trade guy. Like, I think the key is, like, you wanna be the one manipulating the draft board. I don't really want to be the one just sticking and picking at my slot. Like, whatever you do, I think the key is to really be dynamic throughout the draft, where you want to be thinking about how the larger economy of the draft is functioning and how your trades fit within that. You want to be taking advantage of any chance if you can be really observant of how the trade economy is functioning, and if you can get trade ups that are cheaper than other people are trading up, if you can get trade downs a little bit better. And then you want to be thinking too about, you want to have a good feel for the ADP of the draft, and you want to kind of know where do I want to be drafting what positions at ADP in what portions of the draft. And then how you play those early rounds, how do you set yourself up to be picking in spots that you think are favorable, where you're more likely to get the end of your tier breaks, and where if you need a certain position, you've positioned your later picks to be in a good spot to grab that position. And you want to be doing that before everybody else realizes it. Like, I'm in a couple of drafts right now. I'm in one Devy draft right now where I think, like, we're in the 8th round. I think I've already made 7 trades. I made my first pick when I was on the clock. Every other pick that I have made since that time, and actually every pick of mine starting from my second pick all the way through round 12, none of them are being made in my original draft slot. I'm moving everywhere. I moved up to get a second first round pick. I didn't pick it all in the 2nd or 3rd. I picked twice in the 4th. I picked twice in the 5th. I didn't pick in the 6th. I picked twice in the 7th. Like, it's all over the place. And a lot of that is just, if you can kind of grind some of the edges, if you can pick your spots and get your tier breaks, I think you can really be proactive. And you want to be looking around 2 rounds ahead. What position group do I want to be picking there? Where's the end of that tier break? Can I get out of this pick for that? What if there's a pick I don't think I want that is 3 rounds away? Can I find a way to move that pick out of there ahead of time before I come on the clock and everybody realizes nobody wants to be stuck picking there? It's a constant process. I think you want to be dynamic and you want to be vigilant.
Yeah, it's important, and not everyone can. Like, that's a very specific. I know there are some guys that when the draft starts, they are sending the same trade to 10 different managers because they have the time to do that. We understand not everybody can, but like Jacob said, like, that is a really good point in being hyperactive in your drafts. I think that's a good lead in